G'day, we're David and Paula. Like many people, we've been working hard for many years and we're too young to retire, but we've decided to take a gap year from work. We've bought a new van and we're doing a lap right around Australia. This episode we head to Quobba Blowholes, then continue our journey north, changing our plans to head towards Karijini. Then the Defender breaks down. We do a complete review of the Land Rover recovery process. This is just absolutely insane.
Hey, g'day. Where are we?
We're heading towards Carnarvon.
So we drove from Denham yesterday. We did end up dropping in at the Stromadelites. We then decided to drive. We were going to stay at the Gladstone Beach campground, but we just decided to press just a little bit further up the road so we were closer to Carnarvon. So we stopped at one of the roadside free camps and it was pretty good.
Yep.
But it rained last night. We knew it had rained a bit, but when we got out,
we were underwater.
there was sort of a couple of inches of water all around the. We had a little lake all around the van and the car. It actually looked worse than it was. It wasn't too bad at all, but it had all pooled. So they're obviously bucking it down overnight. So today we're going to head into Carnarvon. We're going to stock up,
do some groceries,
get some water, get some fuel. Definitely need to put some AdBlue into the car. And
that's all boring stuff, isn't it?
That's all boring stuff, yeah, as opposed to the more interesting grocery stuff. Yeah. Anyway. But anyway, got to do the AdBlue, and then we're going to sort of head north, and we'll see if we can get a camp out by the Quobba Blowhole. So we've changed our plans. So originally we weren't going to get Karijini. I don't know, have we said this before?
Possibly.
Yeah, we weren't going to get Karijini in, which was obviously a big miss, which really just had to do with the very few bookings that we've actually done. Just because we had to, just because of the demand on certain campgrounds and things up north. Grudgingly, it looked like we were going to miss out on doing Karijini, so that was fine. You know, we sort of thought this was going to be pretty good, but we hummed and hard and looked at it. Sort of looked at our routine and they said, look, you know what, we'll just spend a couple of days at Quobba Blowholes, and let's see if we can get Karijini in. So we're going to go out to Karijini and then double back to Exmouth. So normally going up the coast, you'd probably go to Exmouth, then cut across to Karijini and then head up towards Port Hedland and Broome from Karijini. So we'll put on a few extra kilometres, but looks like we'll get Karijini in. G'day.
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 So I suppose the first thing you'll notice is that we're not in the Defender. So if I haven't already posted it and showed you the pictures, unfortunately the Defender's been towed away on a tilt bed. We've had a problem. It was going into limp mode. They can't tell us what it is. And the Land Rover model, unfortunately, is that, you know, if the RAC can't essentially jump-start it again and get you on the way, anything else, they effectively put it on a tilt bed and take it to the nearest Land Rover dealer. In our case, that's 800 kilometres away. So right now, we're stranded in Exmouth and with the van, and the car's a long way away, and we're waiting to find out what's going on with all that. So anyway, so we'll make the best of it, and we're heading out to do a little bit of snorkeling and stuff at a couple of the beaches out at Cape Range National Park. We've got some bookings out at Cape Range National Park next week, so we're desperately hoping that our car gets back, because otherwise we'll lose our booking we won't be able to take up our booking at Osprey. So we're very lucky to get that, but anyway, we'll see how we go. It's been some time since this incident occurred, and we wanted to be fair to it. So I'm in a completely different location, which probably tells you something. But anyway, so doing this sort of direct piece to camera is probably the easiest way to do it. So first of all, thanks for joining us. I hope this is of interest to you, and also just remember, we don't do this for profit. We don't want to be influencers. We don't want to be content creators. And 100% of any YouTube ad revenue that we make, which is not a lot, but 100% of it goes to charity. So if you do like these things, if you do find that they're useful, please like, subscribe. If you know of other people who might be interested in the sorts of things that we cover in the channel, there's a bit of a shadow sort of going there, so sorry folks. Then please share, and we'll see if we can send some more money to charity. In this episode and this segment, what I'll do is I'll go through what happened, and sometimes that's in excruciating detail, but just so you know step by step what happened. Go through what we think worked well, what didn't work well, and some things that could potentially be better, and we'll talk about the resolution. So that's the process that we'll go through, and if you see me referring to my notes, that's just actually so we stay fair and we try and stay as accurate as possible. But anyway, yeah, look, without boring you, let's get into it. As you saw, we'd been to Quobba Blowholes, and then we had decided to head towards Karijini, and then the car broke down. So in short, it actually went into limp mode twice that day. So the first time we were sort of a couple of hundred kilometres up the road. We were a bit short of a place called the Manila Roadhouse on the way up the West Australian coast, and we were travelling along probably only just above 90 kilometres an hour, which tends to be our sweet spot when we're towing. The conditions were relatively moderate. It was warm but not hot, and all of a sudden the car just lost power We didn't know what had gone wrong. Red warning light came up. Basically said restricted performance, drive with caution, and it's a red caution. Right, so it's familiarly known as limp mode. And that just restricted sort of how fast the car can go. So we drove up the road a little bit, pulled over to one of the roadside rest areas. Couldn't hear or see anything noticeable. There was no other sort of warning signal. There was nothing sort of catastrophic. There was no clunks. There was no, it was just the loss of power. Which, as it worked out, the loss of power was the car going to limp mode. Right, so it was the cause of the car losing power. Not the response to the car losing power. And we were out of phone range at that particular location. So we turned the car off, and then when we turned it back on, the warning had gone. So we thought we'll drive up the road a little bit, and the car performance went back to normal. So I thought, all right, okay, let's get ourselves to phone range, and we'll ring roadside assist. So we went to Manila and rang roadside assist, and sort of said, look, can someone come out and have a look at this? And the short answer was no, because there was no warning light at the time, and a roadside assist is essentially outsourced. So it's not Land Rover, it's called Land Rover roadside assist. It's not, they outsource it. And in turn, that organisation contracts the various state auto clubs. So in this case, in Western Australia, the RAC. And so the RAC, so the roadside assist basically sort of said, well, look, there's no purpose sending somebody out, because there's no code, there's nothing that they can have a look at, which actually isn't quite true. I mean, the car did actually, as it worked out, record the incident, but they just didn't have the capacity to have a look at it, and it was very remote. So there's the very first lesson in all this. The roadside assist does ultimately rely on those auto clubs and what they're going to do. But the short and long of it is that they sort of said, look, they were happy for us to continue to drive. So we sort of thought, oh well, let's see how we go. So we got back in the car, and for the next couple of hours, no problems. We got to a place called past Exmouth, and we were heading towards Tom Price for Karijini. Fueled up at the Nunatara Roadhouse. And then turned on the road to go towards Tom Price and Karijini, and we were going to free camp, and it was getting later in the afternoon by this stage. Anyway, about 50 kilometres east of the Nunatara Roadhouse, again, car went into limp mode, and you saw that on the video. So that was actually when we were east of Nunatara. So we had the discussion. It was a Friday afternoon. Paula was right in the sense that we were unlikely to get too much assistance into the Friday evening in a remote location. So we just had to toss up. Do we just pull over and then try to resolve the next morning, or what? Look, in the end, we pulled over again, couldn't hear anything. The car reset itself, and we really had a choice. Did we keep pressing forward to Tom Price, or did we head back towards the coast? So we headed back to the Nunatara Roadhouse, where there was mobile reception. And pulled up there, spoke to roadside assist again, and at this stage they said, look, nothing's going to happen tonight. More likely will need to be towed. We sort of said, well, sure, we're going to be towed, but what are the conditions? And there's the first thing. They didn't want to tow the caravan, right? And I'll come into that when I review all of this, because if you're towing and you're under the misunderstanding, as we were, well, we wasn't a misunderstanding, we were quite clearly told by the sales team that our caravan would be towed along with the car if we needed to, and that's not only not quite true, it's actually wrong. It's a completely inadequate coverage. But either way, if we wanted roadside assist, they would organise towing that night. Probably wouldn't pick us up till the next morning anyway. So we just agreed with roadside assist. We sort of said, well, can you activate this in the morning? They said, no, you'll need to ring again. So I sort of thought, oh, okay, there's a case in the system, surely you can do better than this. But we decided to sleep on it. So we pulled up at the Nunatara Roadhouse,
but had a perfectly fine night. It was a good place to pull up for one night, and the next morning we sort of got up and worked our way through the problem. At that stage, when we spoke to Roadside Assist again to initiate, they just did not want to send a service driver out. They sort of said, look, you're at least 200, maybe 300 kilometres from our nearest Roadside Assist, and we don't want to send anybody out when there's no code that you can see. We'll just try and organise a tow. We don't know what's going to happen. And at that stage, we discovered that the Land Rover roadside assistance would only tow the caravan 50 kilometres. And in any case, they'd probably just leave us there at the Nunatara Roadhouse, which, as fine as it is for an overnight stay, and it is fine, I mean, it's got some very basic services. That's not where we wanted to be while all this was being resolved. We activated the CRC system at about this stage, and we spoke to Roadside Assist again, and they said, look, we're not going to send a service agent out, but we've actually got somebody out on the road who was in Perth, as it worked out. So if you're not aware, we're 1,500 kilometres north of Perth. But he rang and they did an over the phone diagnosis, took us through each of the steps. We gave some quite detailed sort of views about what was happening, what the conditions were, the fact that we'd lost this power, the engine power, worked out that was the limp mode. But he went through a couple of issues that are common in various makes, not specific to Land Rover, when this happens. We're also burning a lot of AdBlue at this stage. So we weren't sure whether that was part of the problem or, again, whether it was a symptom of the problem. But the short answer from the RAC guys is, well, if the thing is resetting itself, it's not catastrophic, right? So clearly the problem's not recurring as soon as you start back up. So we had no increased temperature, we had no engine warning lights, so there was nothing catastrophic like that. So we decided that we'd head back to Exmouth, which was just the nearest major centre, if you can call it that. And there was also happened to be an RAC service centre there, and we thought somebody might be able to have a bit of a look at the car at that stage and help diagnose what was going on. And keep in mind that the Land Rover roadside assist model ultimately is to tow or get your car back to the nearest Land Rover dealer, which in this case is 800 kilometres south at Geraldton. So to cut a long story short, we decided to head further to the coast, about 280 kilometres to the town of Exmouth, which is where we were eventually going to be after Karijini, and get ourselves there, get ourselves into a caravan park, which again is not our ideal camping arrangement, but we thought that was safest, and then initiate the system from there. So we headed, and as I say, the CRC, the Customer Relationship Centre, was activated at this stage. We got 280 kilometres without further incident to Exmouth, set up there, and thought we'd sort of contact the nearest service centre, who also happened to be the RAC dealer and the towing dealer for that area. And quite rightly, they sort of said, look, you've got to initiate it through roadside assist. I mean, otherwise you're just waiting in line for service, which could have been a couple of weeks there, but they weren't going to touch our car anyway because it was under warranty and it was a Land Rover. So again, we went back through roadside assist, and we then reinitiated the roadside assist. At that stage, they could send an RAC guy out, and he came out. He'd put his OBD reader on the car, but pretty much said straight up and down that they didn't have access to all the more detailed codes of the Land Rover software. And when he started up, he couldn't find it. And when we spoke to both the CRC and the roadside assist people, Land Rover roadside assist, they indicated that because it was a red warning light, because it had occurred twice at this stage, they wanted to tow the car to Geraldton. But they wouldn't tow the caravan with it. And this incident was only one, and I don't, as you know, I don't like the clickbait sort of stuff, so we ended up having a subsequent issue, which you'll see in the next episode as well. But and became figurative that they hadn't towed the caravan with it. They decided that it was going to be towed, and the RAC dealership, the service centre there, who happened to be the Repco service centre there, they organised for the tow truck to come. That didn't come until late that afternoon, and at this stage the Land Rover dealership in Geraldton was put on notice. So CRC do actually provide a priority to you when you're recovered remotely. Shane White from White's, he'd started to get in contact at this stage, and one of the staff members at the CRC was in regular contact. And I've got to say, right at the get-go, and regardless of some things that happened, on this particular occasion, both the CRC response and the Wyatt Land Rover and Shane White and Stephen Wyatt and the team, they were fantastic. All right, so the whole system was sort of on notice to get our car down, get it diagnosed, and hopefully get it fixed. So the car got picked up on the Monday afternoon, so we're now 72 hours after the incident. That delay, so the delay over the weekend, we were part of that decision-making process, so that's fine. And we were all hoping that the car was going to be at Wyatt's on the Tuesday, late the Tuesday, so that they could diagnose. Well, as it worked out, the car didn't get there until the Wednesday. No one can quite figure that out. We know that they'd had some sort of illnesses with some of their staff at the tow truck company, but again, in this particular case, it almost would have been better if the Wyatt's team, who happened to be the RAC dealers in Geraldton and tow truck, if they'd actually come to pick up the car and take it back. Because not only did we end up getting a delay in their diagnosis and therefore getting the car repaired, in fairness to them, they actually had to put off some work that they had organised, and they were on standby, and then they didn't get the car for another 24 hours after they were expecting it. So things bogged down around that stage. But anyway, the car got back to Geraldton, and in the meantime, under the Land Rover Assist, roadside assist model, you're supposed to get a rental car just to help you get around while you're stranded, keeping in mind your caravan's stranded, you're stranded, and you need a car. At this particular time, we got a call from the Land Rover Roadside Assist, who are not Land Rover, despite the fact that the lady told me that she was Land Rover. She's not, right? They're a subcontracted company, and they couldn't provide a rental car, and we weren't very happy about that at all. And you know, for Land Rover, that's not good enough, right? And essentially, I then got pointed to the fine print that getting that car is subject to availability. Well, this is just crazy, guys. I mean, Land Rover are a global car company. Their recovery system relies on this remote recovery. That's their model, and that's fine, right? So the car got recovered, but you can't leave people stranded without a vehicle. It just didn't matter what we sort of said, and they sort of said, look, pretty much fend for yourself, see if you can find a rental car. As it works out, they have contracts with 2 rental car companies and won't pick up the phone to ring anybody else. That's all they'll do, which is completely unacceptable, right? So as it worked out, I picked up the phone and there were rental cars. So despite being told there weren't rental cars available in Exmouth, there were. Just that there was a couple of the other rental car companies. So I was able to get a rental car. And despite all this, we're then being told that you can only have it for so many days, right, and paid. And I sort of said, well, you know, hang that, our car's been delayed. You couldn't get me a rental car. I've got to be able to get around, at least for the basics and the necessities in at Exmouth. So that bit didn't work very well, and that's not very good. And the other bit which didn't work very well, in my view at that time, and it proved to be quite figurative, was the fact that they didn't recover the caravan as well. So anyway, whilst we were unhappy, the car got picked up, it was being looked at. The Wyatt team in Geraldton were excellent, and I was getting regular contact from CRC, updating me as we were going along. I was getting updates from both Shane White and the CRC, and they were coinciding with the information. That was good. Everybody was talking, and we knew what was going on. So big tick on all that. And once we sort of got over the grumpiness of the poor response on the rental car, and we'd found a rental car, we just decided we just had to make the most of it while we were waiting, and hopefully the car would turn around quickly. So as it worked out, Shane White rang me and sort of said, look, I'm sorry to say this, but your car didn't get to us for another 24 hours after we thought. He explained that was equally inconvenient for them, and I agree. And what that basically meant is that the car didn't get diagnosed until very late in that week, and it was a turbo-related issue. And the tech, when they went through, they found that there was a crimp or a kink in the vacuum harness of the turbo system, and in conjunction with Land Rover, they felt that was obviously restricting the vacuum air operation intake for the turbo, and that's what was triggering the response, which was then shutting the system down after a period of time and putting it into limp mode. And the good news was that they actually had some of these systems, and it was a replacement part, so it was not the original part. There was a new part number for it, so maybe it's a known problem somewhere within the system, but either way they were able to fix it. So the good news was that by the end of the week they'd identified it, the parts are in the system, they'd order it, the parts were winging their way to Geraldton. The not so good news was that because the car had been delayed getting back to them, they weren't going to be able to get the parts and start the work until the following week. So effectively a problem that, as it worked out, we could have had the car back to us inside the week, was heading towards the 10-day or 2-week mark. And we had some bookings locally, and the CRC knew that, and everyone was working hard to try and get there. And the delay in this case was not Land Rover's fault, right? There's obviously whoever had been tasked to tow the car took longer than you would normally expect to get the car back down to Geraldton. But we knew it was being fixed, and every step of the way Shane was keeping us informed. And by the following week, we had the news that the part had arrived. They'd actually managed to get it in. It was fiddly, but once they had it in and replaced, they'd run the tests, taken it for a test drive, couldn't replicate the fault any longer, and they felt that they had fixed it up. So at that stage, they put the car on their tilt bed and they sent it back up. And even though we're out of sequence in the episodes, you'll see some of the other things that we were doing in between to try and make the most of it. And if you're going to get stuck, Exmouth's not such a bad place to get stuck, just apart from the fact that you never want to be separated from your car and have your car and van separated. So the good news for us was that the car was on a tilt bed and heading back to us. Was being brought up by the Wyatt's team, so Steve Wyatt, who's sort of the father in the operation, and Shane, his son in the operation, running the service centre. Between them, absolutely fantastic, and they did it when they were involved. Mighty effort to keep us informed and to get the work done. So what worked? Look, I think the system is slave to tow your car. So the recovery back to Geraldton, once the car got there, that bit worked seamlessly. Good advice, good feedback. So the Wyatt's team, big thumbs up, and I've said this in other forums, big thumbs up. I mean, and if more Land Rover service centres were like them, right, Land Rover would go a long way to dispelling, concerns that people have about reliability and service and those sorts of things. So they were excellent. The CRC response in this particular case was excellent as well, right? So I try not to name names in these things, and and especially if someone doesn't do the right thing, like in fairness, I'm not going to name them. I'll use the right channels for all that. But in this case, Ethan, who was the case manager, who I understand is a young guy, but he was great. He was empathetic. He tried to provide as much information as he could. If there's some information he didn't know, he went off to get the technical assistance that he could. And he was clearly talking to Shane White, and they were sharing information. We got two channels of feedback, and they were coinciding. So well done, Ethan. Well done to the CRC in this case. And given some poor experience in the past, that was a pleasant alternative, and that's the way it should be, I might add, because when you're dealing with CRC, I mean, by their nature, they're dealing with people who've had a problem, and they did that very well. So it didn't work as well as it should. The initial towing company was delayed for one reason or another. You know, I think they did have a sick driver, but if that's the case, they shouldn't have been allocated the job. Right? There are other tow truck operators, and the Wyatts, in this case, are tow truck operators as well. So they could have sent somebody up, had the car picked up, down, and fixed earlier. Right. The roadside assist response was a bit iffy. In retrospect, the fact that the thing was resetting itself, I think, in fairness to everybody, you know, did sort of complicate being able to try and sort of do some initial triage of what was going on. The bit that didn't work, there's two that I'd focus on in this segment. The rental car assistance. Yeah, sorry guys, I understand you're having contracts with particular rental car companies, but your obligation when someone is stranded to provide them some form of mobility doesn't end just because you've only got contracts with two companies. Right? You know, it's completely unacceptable to say, yeah, sorry guys, we couldn't find a car in the area, over to you, you see if you can do it. Right? You know, they've got some more weight in the system, they've got to be able to do that, and as it worked out, we were able to pick up the phone to one of the local rental car companies, and they said, yeah, we've got cars, come straight over. You know, we've got, and that particular car rental company, they were great. Right, they were great, and we had to extend a few times because of these delays that occurred, and they just said, yep, extend, and now we've got to hope that we actually get all that back from Land Rover. So that bit did not work and wasn't good enough. The other bit, which I think that is a big lesson for anybody who's using their Defender to tow or using their Land Rover to tow, when we were told that we had roadside assist and this model about recovering your car back to the nearest dealership, and that's how they make up the fact that they don't have the service centre network of some of the other brands, and that's fine. You know, like we were convinced by that. You know, that is, we will get your car, and the salespeople said, and your van back to the nearest dealership. Well, that's just not true. They don't do that at all. And in fact, not only don't they do that, but the caravan, they will recover the caravan not more than 50 kilometres, even though the car's going 800 kilometres. And when you're dealing in remote Australian terms, 50 kilometres is nothing, it's a joke. That basically means the roadside assistance is no good if you're towing. And I'll cover that a bit more. So we also had a look at our RACQ, right, we're from Queensland, so the Royal Auto Club Queensland coverage, because we took out the ultimate level of subscription, which provides some additional benefits in towing. That will only get you 100 kilometres in the case of breakdown, basically to the nearest safe place that they can get you 100 kilometres, or if they've got an RACQ service centre near up to 200 kilometres to a service centre. And I hope that means if you're in another state, say to the RAC or the RACV service centre, I hope it's the equivalent in each state, up to 200 kilometres. Now, that's not very far either in terms of, we had to, in essence, recover ourselves 280 kilometres. And if you don't follow that entitlement, you've got to pay the tow truck company the balance, which is $3 per kilometre. Okay, so keep that in mind. 800 kilometre tow for the car. If you'd wanted your caravan to go with the car, which it should, $2,400. RACQ coverage provides a more catastrophic level, which basically means that if your car is off the road for what they deem to be a significant period, and we're talking about only multiple days, they'll recover your caravan to home. Right. Now, very clearly, they're not contemplating doing it from Exmouth to Brisbane too many times, right? But they will. So that provides you some comfort. If your car completely breaks down, your van's going to be able to get home one way or the other. But there's nothing in between, right? Nothing in between. And interesting enough, and I don't want to talk about the people within the Land Rover system who were being sort of very honest and frank, but definitely the impression was given that this benefit around the caravan is inadequate, but it used to be better, right? And it's been reduced to this joke of a level of 50 kilometres recovery for the caravan. And it's not a good thing having your caravan 800 kilometres separated from your car. And as you'll see in future episodes, became quite critical the fact that the car and the caravan didn't get recovered together. So that bit's not good enough, but a big lesson if you're towing, have a look at your coverage, because there is a gap in these covers. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for RACV, for a couple of the other auto clubs, because they probably outsource to the same, if you like, insurer, because it's an insurance product. And there's a gap in the market there. And at some stage I'll sort of make a suggestion as to what I think Land Rover can potentially do about it. So those two things didn't work: the car rental response and the caravan recovery. So they're the key things, and we got our car back in this instance. We were able to come out of the RAC caravan park. We were there for an extended period of time, but in the next episode, if not at the end of this sort of extended episode, I'll show you a little bit around that RAC sort of park. And we went and did some snorkeling on the Ningaloo Reef while we were waiting, just using the rental car to get ourselves out and about. And in the end, we lost 2 days of our booking at Osprey Camp, which is sort of one of the sort of iconic campgrounds on the Ningaloo Reef. So we got 5 of the 7 days. So I hope that helps on this incident. Stay tuned, because that's not the end of the story. As you'll see, more happened, right? And that will help fill in some jigsaw puzzles. And I don't mean to be cryptic. I don't want to get into too much clickbaity type stuff, because we want to keep it both real and constructive. But at least in this occasion, we got back on the road, and we were very thankful to get the car back. Now, the other thing which still hasn't been fixed is the car still periodically goes into 2-wheel drive mode from 4-wheel drive, and we still get that warning. We're trying to manage that around, and I've got to say that my dealer on the East Coast, they've just turned hopeless. They've just reverted to form. So we sent them notes sort of saying, guys, we haven't heard anything from you. How are we going to resolve this issue? Like, we're managing it as we travel. We know that we'd agreed that we couldn't hold up the trip any further, but this is still happening regularly. And we're taking photos as many times as it happens as we can. And I'd almost put the gag rule in, except it would bore you stupid with that warning coming up. What that basically means, we can't leave it in auto mode or comfort mode if we're doing anything tricky. Like if we're going onto gravel, the car should be more than capable of doing that if we're going to be anywhere near sand or any lumpy bits. I mean, sometimes even going over a speed hump can set it off. But it means that if we're going off-road anywhere, we've got to we've got to manually select one of the most appropriate terrain responses, rather than letting the terrain response system select the best outcome as we go, because otherwise it just throws itself into 2-wheel drive. So we have been able to manage it as we go around, but it is very annoying, and it's not the way the car should perform. We actually want the car to work, and we have persisted, but if it gets to the stage that the car becomes undrivable, that would be tragic. But yeah, so at the moment the good news is that the car had got back to Exmouth, and we got back on the road, all right, and then we went out to the Ningaloo Reef and we did some good stuff out there. And as I say, stay tuned, because it's still not the end of it. but I won't cover off on that now. You know, not because I want to do clickbait, but I think I just wanted to deal with this segment and this issue and how it's returned. Now, if I've skirted over something, if something's not clear, don't hesitate to ask the question. You know, it's, as I say, there's been a bit of a delay. We just wanted to do this piece outside the sting of the moment, which I think is sort of a little bit hard to sort of stay focused on keeping things balanced. And I'm sorry if this bit has gone on a bit longer and it's been a longer program, but yeah, I just wanted to go through. So if you've got any questions, or if I've missed something in all this, if you've got a comment, if you've got an alternative view about how we managed it, yeah, look, please let us know, because, you know, obviously we've been reviewing not only Land Rover, but, you know, did we make the right decision points? Did, you know, going back to Nunatara and then towing the car to Exmouth, was that the right decision? So if you find this useful, please like, subscribe. Remember, you know, we are going to send, my light's just gone off, we are going to send some money off to charity as well. And if you've got any questions, if I've skimmed over anything, please put them in the comments and we'll try to answer them either in the next episode or in the comments themselves. So look, I hope that helps, but at least for the moment, and there's a clue, for the moment, we're back on the road. Next episode, we head to Cape Range National Park and explore the magical Ningaloo coast. And then,
so having lost our car for 10 days, we're just driving out of Exmouth and it's just gone back into limp mode. So we called Roadside Assist. So we contacted CRC and they're looking at the options now, but the good news is that they've authorised to tow the van with the car this time. Our stuff at the Dampier Peninsula will be shot to bits and we'll still have to work out what happens with Gibb River Road or anything. You know, we won't even know until after. We won't know until after the car's been assessed again.
again, thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, 100% of our YouTube advertising revenue goes to charity.